Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the iFlight IH3 O3. This only comes, as far as the iFlight website as of right now, with the DJI O3 Air unit, so you've got to have compatible goggles for that. One thing you won't find in this video is GPS data. I could not get mine to work. Yes, I did contact iFlight, and we went back and forth changing a lot of settings in Betaflight. I laid the antenna over to the side, and each time I would test, I would wait about 10 to 13 minutes, and I got 0 satellites. Did the GPS pass through to make sure that the GPS was talking to the flight controller. Shielded the wires to see if that would help. Went to different locations as well to see if by chance I was somehow in a black hole, even though I've got another quad with GPS that could pull them up just fine. But unfortunately, I didn't have any success, and because I let it sit there for 10 to 13 minutes on most of my attempts, I had to take my little fan outside and keep that O3 Air unit cool so that it wouldn't shut down on me and I could see in the goggles. But other than that, we're going to cover this just without the GPS data. Comes with Zing 1504 3100 kV motors. The prop are the HQ 3.5 inch by 2.5 tri-bladed props. Of course, this has the DJI O3 Air unit. There's the camera, and there's the VTX back there. And you can see some of the shielding that I already did and showed you a picture of. Flight controller with that USB-C connection on there and a 20x20 mounting is the Blitz Mini F7. And the ESC just below it is the Blitz Mini E55. This is an H-shaped frame, so that does keep your props out of view, but even if you were to include an overhead camera, you're probably not going to be able to find a way to get props in the view, which is kind of the reason behind this H design. We got motor wire protectors or sleeves on here, and I have heard from a few people that over time the adhesive does wear out on these, so you probably want to get yourself some motor wire tape. This is the stuff I use. Some people call it hockey tape, but this is not fuzzy. Doesn't have any of that on there. I have got it linked down below. I oftentimes refer to it as Emax tape. Emax tape is something that Emax first brought to the market as far as on quads. I've since bought some myself, and I have it linked from Amazon and Emax down in the video description, way down in that list. So ultimately, for your quad building, I'd get some of this on hand. Frame features some carve-outs where they don't go all the way through the carbon. I suspect that's just to reduce weight. In the case of up here near the O3 Air unit, that might have a little bit of a heat dissipation factor, but I can't be certain of that without doing further testing. The rear print holds our GPS as well as our O3 antenna. O3 antenna is flexible. This does tilt back and forth. One other thing about this, I did check to make sure I had power. Obviously, I had power because GPS path-through was showing it was attempting to communicate. The little blue light on the bottom of this was flashing away, so power was fine. Then we've got a couple holes to put our T-style antenna through, just as the manufacturer did here. We do have a battery mat here, rubberized battery mat, and it does have a little bit of a texture to it, so that should help keep the battery in place. And our battery plugs into the XT30 right up here, and there does look like to be a little daughter board on the bottom of that XT30. I'm not sure if that has any sort of capacitance or voltage regulation built into it or not, but I thought it was interesting it was there. Our accessories are pretty light. We get a screw, a wiring harness for a receiver, another screw to mount your GoPro or whatever external HD camera you might choose to use, various paperwork and documentation, and a sheet of stickers. I think it also came with extra props, but I've had this thing so long as I've kind of worked on it as I troubleshot the GPS as well as weather issues. May have misplaced that bag of extra props, so check your product description for all the accessories. It weighs 216.5 grams. And on my flights, I use this Emax 4S 850 milliamp battery. The largest recommended battery is a 1050 4S. Oftentimes get questioned about this size of battery across brands and them being puffy. Nah, it's not puffy. It's fine. Emax batteries are probably made by G&B. And with that 850 milliamp 4S battery, we get 313 grams. The bottom carbon fiber plate looks to be 3 millimeters thick. It is a single bottom plate. And the top plate looks to be 2 millimeters thick. Motor post to motor post, well, it goes further than my calipers at 155 millimeters, so I'm going to estimate it's probably 165. As we get back to the typical view here, you can see my battery is not quite all the way charged. It actually probably was charged, but I had an element in the middle of the screen that I then decided to disable, which was actually total runtime. And that took me a minute to get into the OSD, navigate through everything in order to clear that element out. I was using that as kind of video evidence for the time that I was troubleshooting on the GPS. So this is a cruiser. H-style frame, as we discussed already, and it has been covered by others. Thankfully, I know Ian, Mads Tech, Albert Kim, and Gal Kramer, they all reviewed theirs, and they didn't seem to have any GPS problems, or at the very least, when I kind of skimmed through their video and I found the flight data, it did show GPS data, which would be in the top right, but I disabled that because it just didn't work. So most likely yours would work, and I would expect that if you had the same troubles, that iFlight would send you a replacement GPS module. In my particular case, I'm just going to move forward with the review. I've done the flights actually this week. Not this week. This week I've been waiting on weather to fly other things because it's been rainy and windy. We've had rains. I think it's been 4 of the last 6 days there's been some sort of rainstorm. But at any rate, so this is an H-style frame, which is intended to keep the props out of view. It's not necessarily designed around fast flight, although if you follow this channel, you know that I will be at least attempting to fly it faster, just so you can get an idea. So if you're out doing your scenic sort of flying, how fast you might be able to go, or what that speed looks like, and how steady the footage is, and how does it descend, and different descend angles, how quickly can it move if you need to make a quick avoidance. GPS data, for those that might come from camera drones, it's not used for hovering in place like a DJI Mavic or something like that. It's mainly used for informational purposes. Say you're out, you're cruising a hillside and you spot a treasure. You could use the GPS data in order to go locate that treasure. So that's something you could use. Or for fail-safe purposes, say you go down over the side of a hill, so you get the hill between you and the quad and you lose video, or your control link gets all wonky, then GPS can give you a fighting chance of getting the quad back to home. Return to home in Betaflight 4.4 is supposed to work better. I just wouldn't rely on it. I've tested it a few times over the years. It's not the same as the DJI camera drones and their return to home, where it lands on the same landing pad you take off with. But when it comes to cruising, I think a lot of people will ask about this versus other things like the Synlog 3.5. Now, this is always going to fly smoother. It's going to put up with more wind as well. Whenever you put prop protection on something, it flies a little bit different. It makes you feel like you have to force it sometimes. You know, they've gotten better and better over the years. They used to be really difficult to fly, but those prop protected Cinewhoops, they tend to fly a lot better now, but there's still a flight difference in not only capabilities, but how they just kind of cut through the air versus without that prop protection. So if you're mainly looking to get your cruisy sort of flight, or a flight to get your environment on film, I would suggest this. I would suggest the Cinewhoop sort of stuff if you're working around animals or people or something of that nature. We're not going to watch this entire flight, kind of an evening time flight. Very low winds, not too bad. I think they had the wind data on my notes here at 9 miles per hour. Probably got a little less than that in the backyard. I have been asked about getting a unit to measure, and I've thought about that. And then it's one more thing. You know, this isn't my job, this is my hobby, so making it too cumbersome to go out and fly and track all the data, it might get in my way of actually going out and doing the flights and just enjoying the time with these new quads. In this cruisy sort of flight, with the 850 milliamp battery, 4S again, it's Emax labeled, very likely made by G&B. I get 6 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm pretty certain that if you have a fresh battery, just like it, you'll get 7 minutes pretty easy. Again, my battery has seen a lot of flights on it, so it's not necessarily the most healthy battery. As much as I try to take care of my batteries, sometimes I do just discharge them lower than I should from time to time, or they stay charged slightly longer, or they just have use, you know? So I wouldn't be surprised on this if you even get more than 7 minutes on a good fresh battery. Of course, you can go up to a higher capacity battery and get more flight time as well. My thoughts on the cruisy flight is it cruises around real nice, tracks real good. We get nice smooth video out of that O3. Oh, by the way, this is This does not have Rocksteady or EIS turned on, so this is just native out of the camera. No smoothing of the video. It has been pre-processed. Well, it's been pre-processed to take it from MOV format to MP4 format, but it has not been processed for stabilization in something like GyroFlow. Let's go down to the end of the flight. Let's go to about 645, and you'll see the last few seconds, just to kind of show you that, yeah, I got 650 on this battery, and you'll see where the battery voltage is, because I always keep that in the lower left-hand corner. You can see our battery has come well up above 3.6 volts, or it's well over 3.5. It's a touch over 3.6 volts per cell. So the battery's in really good shape. All right, this is our faster flight. You see a different take-up spot. This was on a different day, and it was smoking hot. We went from having like 50s and 60s to 93-degree weather, and my camera would overheat in the full sun, my flight audio camera, so I moved it over the cabana in the shade, and that helped me be able to get the sound that I like to include in these so that you can tell how much noise and what the flight sounds like. Of course, it's not exactly where I'm sitting. I would say that's, what, about 25, 30 feet away from me. You probably noticed there at the very beginning how I was kind of wobbly and kind of shaky. That was something that it just doesn't... It feels like the tune's a bit loose in this flight format. It doesn't really have the tight sort of freestyle tune that I'm used to. It's got a tune that's specific to its design profile, which is that more cruisy flight, which I didn't even notice a tune issue. And I shouldn't say a tune issue. It's not tuned how I would want to fly aggressively like this, but you can see after I get into the battery a minute or so, I start to get things calmed down. I start to get kind of used to the feel of it, so you can definitely freestyle it. I do that little thing where I kind of back up to give you a measurement of the prop wash handling. This does not turn real tight at speed. You'll see I use a lot of throttle from time to time. Part of that is going to be the H-frame. Part of that is going to just be the overall weight at over 300 grams. And we have a low pitched prop on here. So it doesn't turn real tight, and I end up using a lot of throttle on some of these turns, especially when I'm doing them at speed. You'll see 80 plus on the throttle value, which, by the way, is in the top left-hand corner. If you're wondering how much throttle I'm using, that probably would have been useful back into cruisy flight as well. So if you missed that, just scroll on back to get that point of data for the flight. But I do these things on pretty much all the quads because it's more native to me. It's what I like to do as far as flights, and this included the one kind of crash, which was real minor, and you see I just take off again, and it didn't even really ding up a prop or anything, but cut that corner a little close and got into some greenery, which is lovely to see the greenery coming out. Makes the environment a lot more enjoyable to fly in. And then just tumble to the ground. Real minor thing, not an issue at all, but again, this isn't something that I would say you would want to learn on. So if you haven't done any flying, I think you probably want to look at something else to start out on. But if you enjoy flight and you like that sort of cruisy flight and you want to go out on something that's 3.5 inch propped and it's pretty efficient, again, I think you can get easily 7, probably get 10 minutes on that 1050 battery, especially a new good one. So if you like to go out and cruise for somewhere between 7 and 10 minutes, doing that sort of what I oftentimes call a flat flight, so you're not doing a bunch of flips or rolls, you're not doing a bunch of punches or dives. Everything's pretty smooth, pretty easygoing, enjoyable sort of exploratory flight is kind of the typical term that I use to describe what it's designed for. Of course, I just like to fly more aggressively. I like to hit gaps. I like to go around the yard and everywhere, and so I tend to include that in my videos. Tends to draw my videos out a little bit because then we go back to the desk and we talk about all the details of things I noticed as my time with it passed by. By the way, it's an O3 air unit, so it's going to be expensive. I'm looking here on the iFlight website, and oh boy, $559.99, and that depends on what you choose for your receiver options or if you go for other battery parts. If you have the iFlight Defender, the batteries that the Defender does work on this quad because of the nature of the XT30 connector and where they have that. I actually flew it on a 900 milliamp battery, but I don't have any flight information because I didn't have an SD card in. No recording. So yeah, that was not good. Okay, the flight has ended there, and you can see we've got 4:05 in our flight time, and our battery is coming up above 3.6 volts per cell. I don't think I made a big mention of it, but up here up front, this is all 3D printed. I would encourage you to get like a clear UV filter or ND filter, something that's clear, just to have on here all the time. You do note the 2 positions that you can mount the camera, but the camera still moves really, really easily. This little piece down in here is not a 3D print as far as I can tell. I didn't disassemble this to take a look, but you can see that the camera holds in place pretty well, but it still gives you the flexibility of being able to change your camera angle depending upon what sort of speed in your flight. These are metal standoffs inside this print. This isn't nylon or anything like that. We've got a TPU print wrapped around that metal standoff, and we've got large M2 screws down in here. And then on the bottom, I kind of already showed you this, but we'll highlight it. You know, we have that single slab bottom piece. So if you break an arm or you break anything, you've got to disassemble all of this and then put it back on your replacement plate. But the reason why I want to take a deeper look at it was not only these cutouts, but that this nose piece, it's all one. It all comes out over here to hold your camera. So there's very little camera protection. You don't have any motors or anything out here. So if you go headlong into something, it is very likely, because when we fly, we tilt forward. That's how quads fly forward. The camera is going to hit kind of first. So you want to be confident about your flight skills before you go taking a $500 quad and flying it through the woods or through a Pando or something like that. Not really what this one's designed around, but always want to make sure that I mention those sorts of things, because you never know who is watching or doing their research early on in their drone or FPV journey. This is copper tape. I've had that around for a long, long time, back when I first got started, and that's what I used to try to shield the wiring, which I already showed you a picture of. I also put some over the top of the O3 air unit. Again, this moves around, so you can change its position if you should need to. It's mounted down here, the antenna for the O3, with 2 little screws down there, so it's not flopping about too much. Again, the print on the back slides over some metal standoffs. We've got easy access to USB for not only our O3, but our flight controller, as well as our SD card, and for binding as well. So really easy setup on this one. Mine is Express LRS, and pretty much whenever I get a quad, what I do is I plug in USB. I see if the LED on the Express LRS receiver lights up. If it does, then I just leave it plugged in. After about a minute, it should go into Wi-Fi mode. I connect to that Wi-Fi Express LRS, and then I open up the browser to 10.0.0.1, and then I look at the target from there. I don't tend to like to quote those in these videos, because that target could change later on. If you get one of these, or they come out with a different receiver with a different target and they're not compatible. So that's my suggestion whenever it comes to Express LRS, is plug it in, get the receiver powered, whether it's USB or battery, and then wait for it to go into Wi-Fi mode, connect to it, and look at the target on the Express LRS receiver webpage. I wanted to see something live. iFlight tends to put thread lock on their screws. Yeah, I see it. Got a little bit of blue there. You can't really, there we go. So we've got some blue, we got some thread locker. That's one of the details that I have kind of noticed about iFlight, is they tend to cover those little things. Not all companies do that. Some do, some don't. I personally think it's a good thing, because I couldn't tell you how many times I've flown a quad and only flown it a couple times, and then when I get it back to the desk at the end of the night or something, I'm just kind of looking at the quad, just taking my gander at it, and then I find I've got a screw way down. Like, whoa, holy catfish, why is that coming out so far? That blue Loctite, that will really mitigate that ever happening. So as long as things are tight, always check your screws when you first get your quads, your new quads, to make sure they are snug. That blue thread locker will surely help. I think I might have called it Loctite. It might be some other brand. Loctite's a brand. It's interesting that they didn't go with an all-in-one, but that does, I think, help keep the body narrow. So they went with a traditional 20x20 mounting stack. So if you're looking at this frame, that's your mounting options. It does not, to me, look like it would natively fit an all-in-one, a diamond-shaped board that's 25.5 millimeters mounting. So you would have to have an adapter if you wanted to just buy the frame and then build it out with that. But otherwise, no real complaints. It flew as designed, as expected. In faster flight, it didn't do great. It was kind of loose is what I would call it, but that's kind of what you want in a cruiser. You want it to be smooth, not real tight. I like it tuned a little bit tighter, so that's a personal preference of mine, how I like to fly. But I think for a reviewing this product, the tune and the design behind it. It flew naturally, it flew easy, it kept real smooth, kept my corners from getting too sharp or getting too awkward looking, especially in the case of a quad that is designed around flat flying, as well as getting some nice footage from that O3 camera and VTX. Of course, I didn't show it in this video, but you have onboard storage, whether it's native in the VTX or using an SD card. That does eliminate the OSD, but for review purposes, at least this time until I get additional feedback, I thought it was really probably most useful for everyone to be able to see the flight data. It should have had GPS, but reviewer's curse, I guess. I sure tried to get that sucker working, but just no luck this time around. Better luck next time, I guess. So if you're interested in the iFlight IH3 O3, I'll have a link down in the video description down below to wherever I can find it, whether it's an affiliate link or not. You can choose where you would like to buy it. You can take a look at the current price point and the options that are available when you buy yours, or if you're just doing your research. That link is just there for convenience, or links are there for your convenience. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise on the iFlight IH3 O3, please let me know down in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.